Welcome back, everybody, to Flock Friday here on Chase's Sports News. I am your host, Chase Coburn, here today. Back onto the program for the third time ever, Valerie Preactor. Valerie, welcome back. I know it's been a little while.
Hey, Chase. So good to be back on and talking Ravens, of course.
I mean, right now, as of the date of this recording, it's August 6th, Ravens' first preseason game tomorrow. It doesn't get much better than this. We're just awaiting the final few weeks here before football season. And you guys see the title here on the episode. We're going to break down a few breakout players for the Ravens. I'm going to kind of pick out Valerie's brain on what she thinks about them and what they could possibly achieve this coming year. But overall, I mean, I know usually we do an episode where we talk about the Ravens and the Orioles, but I think only the Ravens are worth talking about this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly, I know we have been still covering the Orioles. Obviously, that's my job. So still splitting my brain in the summer is tough, but definitely started thinking about, getting ready for football season 2025 and really starting to get excited about it just yesterday. So we had the Ravens join practice, and I think that really is when things start to get real and kick off all of football. And obviously the Hall of Fame game really starts things off for fans. So happy to get back into it. Excited for what the year to come will look like for the Ravens. Obviously, a lot of offseason additions, making their team look really good on paper, and everybody has said that. So, there's definitely a lot to break down.
It just felt like every single year you say, okay, how can this team get better? And every year they seemingly do find a way to get better. It's just a matter of if they can get over that hump and play their best football when it matters most. I mean, I always have this conversation, and people I talk to, they disagree with me. I always say that when the Ravens are playing their best football, nobody can touch them. The problem is the best football never comes when they need to be playing their best football. And so that's where kind of the mistakes lie. And I think that's the issue. But overall, this team on paper, you just mentioned it, everyone's saying, Ravens, Ravens, Ravens. And it's kind of nice to hear because the media loves to criticize Baltimore. But here we are all of a sudden kind of toward the top of these rankings. Do they look like the best team in football from what you've seen so far? Do they look as good as advertised?
Gosh, I mean, it's hard to compare to other teams that we're not covering as closely, but you even look at like the Bills or how the Chiefs ended their season and who they did or didn't get in the draft or this offseason, acquiring guys. And it just seems like the Ravens hit on almost every single guy they went out and wanted and then got. So, yes, on paper, this team is looking really strong in almost every area. And you mentioned the guys on TV, different, media outlets talking about them. There's almost nothing bad you can say about them, honestly. Like maybe a little bit of controversy about the Mike Green draft situation. But other than that, you can't deny he's a great player. So I think if anybody's saying anything otherwise, they're not looking at the right team. They're not looking at the same team that everybody else is seeing. And so, correct. I think that there's other guys they could even go out and still make moves to acquire. Obviously, the Micah Parsons situation is a bit of a head scratcher, but I think that the Ravens just are ready to make this big push. And Eric DeCosta said, let's put our finger on, not necessarily let's put on the go button, pretty much. Like, let's get everybody that we need, and everyone needs to be in Baltimore so we can make this happen in 2025.
I'm actually about to publish an article, and it's just talking about it. Like, obviously, I hate when people throw around the saying Super Bowl or bust for this season, because yes, it's the easy thing to say. Lamar Jackson is under contract, possibly with this extension for like another 5 years. So with the coming extension soon, so it's like at least 3 more. Like this, he's not going anywhere. Like, so as long as Lamar Jackson's under center, you're gonna have Derrick Henry for a few more years. You're gonna have Hamilton locked up, Roquan Smith, Nandi Madubuike. If they don't win this year, it's not the end of the world. Like usually Super Bowl or bust means like, all right, it's going to be blown up after this. It's not Super Bowl or bust. The Ravens do still have an opportunity to win after this year, but I do think the pressure will build eventually, right? I mean, when you have these types of conversations and you say, there's nothing bad about this football team and they don't get it done, it starts to become really frustrating for fans. Valerie, my question to you, as you mentioned the Micah Parsons situation, I'm one of the rare Ravens, I don't know if I want to say reporters or fans here, that is not liking the idea of Parsons coming to Baltimore. And I know that sounds crazy, but I feel like they're already too expensive. What would you think of the possibility of adding Parsons to this incredible core?
And I apologize for my phone going off. It's my computer that's connected. But I agree with you, but I also don't necessarily think the Ravens really need him, to be honest with you, because they added so many guys on the defense through the draft. And then Jair Alexander, one of their later signings, right before, off-season practices really started. I think they're pretty strong even without Micah Parsons. And to be honest, could they go out and pay him? For sure. But I don't know that they're going to want to pay him as much as he wants to be paid. So I think that's kind of the boundary there. But hey, we've seen Lamar Jackson tell Eric DeCosta, go get this guy, and he's done it. So I don't know if he has the same relationship with Micah Parsons, and maybe that's why. But I remember seeing this photo, and it circled around again, of, I believe it was at one of the NFL honors. I think when Lamar Jackson won his second MVP, maybe it was his first MVP, with him alongside DeAndre Hopkins and Jair Alexander. And, or no, I'm sorry, it was Derrick Henry. And how many touchdowns did this trio get, right? And now they're all in Baltimore. It's like, what a perfect recipe for the Baltimore Ravens to have all three of these guys, not to mention the offensive people they already have that can put up ridiculous numbers. And we saw Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry in the year one edition with the offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, last year. What could it look like this year, year two? And then the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, along with a healthy Zay Flowers. You're hoping, Mark Andrews is still good. Isaiah likely coming off of this foot injury. Hopefully, middle of the season starting to ramp up again for him. It just seems like, again, perfect recipe for the Ravens offensively. And then you look at the defense, and like I mentioned, Jair Alexander, a huge get after Ardarius Washington goes down. In, early offseason practices, and you hate that for him because you want him to, go out and get that bag. And like, such a great, important player last year, making some big plays. But Jair Alexander can do that as well, as long as he stays healthy. And then, of course, Malachi Starks, Mike Green, the guys that they drafted. And you're talking about Roquan Smith holding down that defense from the middle, no matter what. So I don't think that, he's talked about as much, Roquan, after last season. But to be honest with you, Nnamdi Madubuike, like you mentioned, Odafe Owe, double-digit sacks last year. My favorite, Kyle Van Noy. I mean, I'll go through the whole roster. There's just so many guys. But you look at them all around, and if you ask the fans, I would say the one thing they would point to, an area of concern, would really be kicker. And you may get to that later.
For the first time in since the Cundiff, before Tucker came.
Exactly. Or even when the first year that Justin Tucker was here as a rookie, and they went to the Super Bowl and won. Could you imagine if history repeats itself with the rookie kicker Tyler Loop? I would lose my mind.
It's so fascinating. Two things I want to touch on. I love Kyle Van Noy. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. What was he, fourth in the NFL in sacks last year? And this guy is never talked about, never really mentioned, never given great recognition. This guy's been unbelievable. It's just another classic Eric DeCosta, sign a veteran, have him have a career season in the latter stages of his career in Baltimore. It's been unbelievable to watch. Samuel Njoku of, Ravens Talk Pod, he does a lot of Ravens stuff. I had him on the show a few weeks ago, and we were ranking the top 10 players on the Ravens with 5 honorable mentions. And we felt like there were 5 guys who were not even mentioned in the entire video who were like, how did we not even have them on here? This is a deep team. This is a very, very talented roster. But I also find it ironic that John Harbaugh, former special teams coach, he's right now probably given maybe his worst special teams unit yet. The question mark, the kicker, and then also the kick returning game as well. We're going to talk about LeJontay Wester in a minute. What have you seen from Tyler Loop so far? I know he's looked really good over the past few days in terms of the training camp stats. What have you seen from Loop so far as he tries to replace Justin Tucker?
Gosh, I really like him. First of all, I think he's just a good guy. And obviously him at the stadium practice over the weekend, first time really kicking at M&T Bank Stadium, as an NFL player, I think is a huge pressure in itself. And for him to go, flawless there, for John Harbaugh to say A++, looked great, had the fans bringing that pressure a little bit and making it loud in there. Obviously, going into a preseason game, it's going to be 10 times that, and then week 1 even more. So I believe that he's ready for this. And again, I've liked what I've seen in practices during training camp, but it's obviously a completely different environment. I'm very much looking forward to him in Buffalo and kicking in the elements. Obviously, it's still early, but that's really what it's going to come down to. How can he, under pressure in those moments, final seconds of the game, and it's all on his leg, how does he perform? And I think a lot of fans are going to learn a lot about him in the first couple of weeks of the season and even in preseason. But I did like having the kicking competition between him and John Hoyland. I thought John Hoyland was great as well. But yeah, having a little bit of a nice friendly competition. You don't know what they're going to do. I was, kind of hoping they would keep both of them along through the preseason just to see how all of that works in different NFL stadiums, and obviously within who they're playing with the Colts, going to Dallas and then, of course, to the Commanders. So it would have been interesting to keep both of them, but obviously you have to have room for other guys in way more of need positions. So I'm very excited about Tyler Loop. Obviously, he's kicked, incredible in at Arizona. Obviously, plus 60 yarders. I mean, I'm happy that he's okay with that, because that's like bare minimum coming into the Baltimore Ravens, right? Like, you have to be a kicker that's okay with making 60+ yard kicks, and he had already done that in college, a 62 yarder. I mean, hands down, straight down the middle, not a problem. So I'm excited to see what he does in his rookie year.
Yeah, it was the first time the Ravens ever drafted a kicker. But I mean, you look at their previous two kickers, Matt Stover, Justin Tucker, two of the greatest ever. It's a shame, obviously, how the whole Tucker situation ended. But I think something that Ravens fans are maybe not remembering in terms of maybe the kicking concern this year is, look, Tucker fixed his issues down the stretch. After that bye week, I don't know what he did. I wasn't, at the facility or whatever, but he fixed it, and he was flawless in that final stretch of the year. But the Ravens also, you could argue, lost a few games last year solely because of Justin Tucker. That Eagles game, that Steelers game. And so even when you look at other weaknesses on the team, Justin Tucker still was a key weakness in some of those games last year. And so if Tyler Loop does just as much as Justin Tucker did, which was not even that great, I think it was 73% of field goals. Obviously, Tucker had a much higher expectation as the greatest kicker of all time. I think that not a lot of Ravens fans are remembering that Luke does not need to be perfect coming in here. Tucker wasn't last year, and that's not why the Ravens went home in the playoffs.
I agree completely, because I think they're going to have to not get used to, but be okay with him missing a few, whether it's extra points in a random moment or field goals from, I mean, I think he missed a 38-yarder, which is kind of random in training camp practice. So you look at sometimes the misses, obviously the conditions play a part in that. I think Ravens fans have to accept that that's going to happen. Maybe not a lot this year, but definitely not 0 times. It's definitely going to happen. And it's going to be okay. And even if, God forbid it costs them a game here or there, like Justin Tucker did last year, they still made it to the playoffs, right? They still set themselves good enough to give themselves the opportunity to make it further than they did. And it did not come down to just, those 2 or 3 games that cost them from Justin Tucker. Look, they lost the first 2 games of the season that had nothing to do with Justin Tucker. So that was completely different. It's obviously going to feel different, at home this year when you don't see Justin Tucker on the sideline, and it's not automatic, okay? But but I think you're still in really good hands with Tyler Loop.
Yeah, and it wasn't automatic for Tucker last year either. Obviously, I don't want to get into the situation, just stick to football. I know you've covered the Ravens for a few years now. You've seen a lot of these teams. What was kind of the reaction from a lot of the team when the whole Justin Tucker situation unraveled, whether it was in the offseason to then getting released? What was kind of the reaction from the fan base, but also particularly the people that you were seeing, whether it was reporters or players or people who knew him personally? What was just kind of the reaction to all of that?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I feel like it was a little shocking when that very salacious article was released. And it just felt like we didn't even know who he was anymore. And you thought you knew Justin Tucker for the 12 years that he spent here in Baltimore. You knew his family, you knew his kid, you knew his story coming out of college, undrafted, free agent rookie. The Ravens took a chance on him, and he just dominated for the last over a decade. And so for then this to come out, that happened so long ago, it was like all these different pieces that are coming out about him, and you don't know what to believe, because a lot of fans never met him before. You never talked to him. I can tell you he's a nice guy. I've sat down with him before. He's so incredibly smart. He's such a great speaker. And obviously, with the Royal Farms thing was so fun, and he's an opera singer, and he is such a multifaceted human being that, I mean, he's just fascinating. And so for this all to come out, and then, we weren't really able to talk about it, not necessarily, just not something you want to focus on, right? And so a lot of the players kind of, made their way around the question. Obviously, it's just different in the locker room without him, right? But I did just speak with Jordan Stout last week, because the biggest thing going into this season is not having him. And now, throughout training camp, he had to work with 2 different kickers. And he said it's not the same, obviously, and that's a huge adjustment. that he's going through, that Nick Moore is going through. I mean, we are a far cry from what the Wolf Pack used to be, right? So now this is the new addition that we're looking at with Nick Moore as the long snapper. You've got Jordan Stout as the punter, the holder, and that special teams unit now probably going to be capped off with Tyler Loop as their new rookie kicker. And so, yeah, it is a completely new era for the Baltimore Ravens when it comes to special teams and the kicking unit.
Absolutely. And I think that will obviously be an interesting situation, and we just don't know, and we'll just have to see how he does operate on the field. I think that it's so sad, the whole situation with Tucker. He's always considered a leader, but it is kind of interesting now. Unless I'm thinking about this wrong, there's no one left from that 2012 team. It's a completely new. I mean, Harbaugh, the only remaining piece. So it is kind of fascinating. Turn the page on the historic year. Still a lot of guys who are still, may get the starting job at Cleveland, but it is kind of crazy that, kind of the roots of that team now gone.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that too, because I think it's Ronnie Stanley who is now the longest tenured Raven, because he was drafted back in 2016 and he's still here. So he's pushing a decade. So he's entering year 10, I guess, with the Baltimore Ravens. So he's now the longest tenured player, Ronnie Stanley, which is definitely different because it obviously used to be Justin Tucker.
Yeah, and he was always kind of considered like, oh yeah, Tucker. He's been here for a while and kind of Mr. Reliable in that sense. Real quick before we break down some of the three breakout candidates for this year, you mentioned it earlier with Tyler Loop. Baltimore, Buffalo for the first game of the season. I don't think it really gets much better than that in terms of entertainment. The guys were top 2 in MVP last year. They played the Chiefs to open their season last year, and that was obviously the team that beat them in the AFC Championship game. How much do you think this game in Buffalo again means to the Ravens after last year's playoffs?
I think it is huge. A lot of guys are looking forward to it, but they also know it's just another game. Obviously, it is. We as the media are making it, the revenge game. It's the rematch of the AFC divisional round from last year. A lot of weather conditions, obviously, big part of that, and the Mark Andrews drop there. But I mean, they're putting a lot of pressure on Mark Andrews to basically, right that wrong, I guess. Even though there were a lot of things that went wrong in that game, that wasn't the only thing. Lamar Jackson turning the ball over like he never did throughout the rest of the season. It just was the most disappointing game at the end of the day. And so I think them going in week 1 is going to be great, just because they get a first look at the Bills. And to be honest with you, I was just thinking about this morning. It's not a game they have to win, but I like that they are going to see Buffalo. They're going to see Kansas City, teams that they are likely going to see in the playoffs. And even though they did that last year with the Bills, completely, tore them apart when the Bills were here in Baltimore that first time, and then they go to Buffalo, it's a completely different story. I still like that they're able to see what the scheme looks like, even though it's going to be not even close to the same by the time you get to the postseason. But still, it's going to be cinema, honestly. The entire football community is hyping this game up like no other. So you've got the NFL season opener, and I don't even think that's going to be as good as a game as this one, potentially.
Well, I would like to break down some candidates who could kind of break out for the Ravens this year, kind of as I'm kind of phrasing it. Players whose stock I would buy this year. They're not really as known, not on the radar, many, but could make an impact. And we were talking about special teams and returning earlier. I want to talk about LaShawnte Wester. I just wrote an article. I'm a freelance writer covering the Ravens for a company called the League Winners, and I just wrote an article for them Wester, because I think he's just so fascinating. 6 most receptions in FBS history, but it's more the returning aspect. Jermaine Lewis had a kick return touchdown in the Super Bowl in 2000. Jacoby Jones in 2012 obviously worked miracles on special teams. Could Wester kind of be that returner? Because I know it's been a big goal for the Ravens. What have you kind of noticed from him?
Yeah, I honestly love it. And like you said before, I think John Harbaugh really takes special notice of special teams. And when it comes to that, I mean, you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, right? You're trying to recreate history, like you said. And I think Keaton Mitchell being back there, I like that. Obviously, they had Justin Hill before. Obviously, I love Tyler Wallace doing that job as well. But I think bringing some new guys in is just, that's what they need, right? You need to keep it fresh back there, especially when you're talking about punt returns, kick returns, anything like that. And so to have some young, undrafted free agent rookies try that position out, I think it's completely worth it. And I'm interested to see how this goes in preseason, to be honest, because again, that transition from training camp and just working out at the Castle in front of 1,000 fans is going to be completely different when you're under the lights at M&T Bank Stadium. You got another team against you, and you're not just trying to be chippy in the joint practice. This is for real. So they're trying to get jobs out there, and they're going to be aggressive. And I like that, and I hope that we get to see that tomorrow night against the Colts.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, personally, I think Wester's a very interesting player. And I think that kick returning is an area that, again, kind of goes unnoticed, but the Ravens have had right now where it's been a big part of how you win football games. And it has been something they've struggled with. Like, I mean, look, punt returner, obviously, Tyler Wallace had that one return in 2023. That's kind of been a big hole. You lost Evan Duvernay. Kick returning is no longer as stable. So I'm excited to see what Wester could provide. And if I'm someone, he's not going to be one of those guys. We look at the three wide receivers Baltimore has, and Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, DeAndre Hopkins, the two tight ends. I'm high on Charlie Kohler. I'm going to break that down in just a minute. Devontae Walker's look good at camp. Like, Wester's not going to be a big part of this offense. I haven't mentioned Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in that sentence. So he's not going to be a big part of the offense. But I think someone like him who could play both offensively and on special teams are the type of players that can separate you from the rest. It can kind of be that X factor. And I think if he can be that versatile asset, that could be huge for this Ravens team. Another breakout player that I want to mention is, I just mentioned his name, and that's Charlie Kohler. And I personally am a huge fan of his because I feel like every time that he's been given an opportunity, I think, what was it, three catches, 64 yards and a touchdown last year against Cincinnati. I personally think that the Ravens should try and go back to what they had in 2019 with that three tight end set. It was Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, and Hayden Hurst. And I think we could see Charlie Kohler get a lot more touches than some people are expecting. I mean, Lamar Jackson just said, I think yesterday, as of the time of this recording, that he's looked great as of late. I really think he could be a solid player for this Ravens team.
And I wouldn't even call it necessarily a breakout season, even if he, starts logging great yardage for him, just because he's been already with the team for so long. And I love doing a three tight end scheme, to be honest with you. It's incredible. It's just, and I know that Todd Monken loves his tight ends as an offensive coordinator. That is like his bread and butter going back to Georgia and Brock Bowers. So I think for the Ravens' usage of their tight ends, yes, you can throw in all three of them. You can even throw Patrick Ricard in there, and he's a pass catcher, and he's going to get a touchdown like he did last year. So I am a big Charlie Kohler fan, absolutely, because he's just as good as a guy off the field that he is on. So I'm always rooting for him to get more catches, to get more touchdowns. 100%. I think he deserves it for sure. And I do believe in this offense this year, they've talked about how they have so many receivers available, not just wide receivers, but tight ends as well. And you throw Derrick Henry in there, who's going to catch 2 touchdowns, not just run them in, because that's what he did last year. But I mean, you've got such a variety of players, and I hope that Lamar Jackson is able to spread the ball around like he's saying that they are going to do, because that is going to make their offense unstoppable, because that means the opposing defense is never going to know where that ball is going, because it could be going to almost 10 guys, 10 different guys on the field. You don't know where. So I think that's the beauty of this offense and what they're working on right now in training camp and looking ahead to the preseason. Obviously, you're not going to see a lot of those guys starting in the preseason, but come week 1 against the Bills, week 2 against the Browns at home, it's going to be just an unload of offense, hopefully, and I can't wait.
Definitely. And I think that I'm trying to tell a lot of people that fantasy owners don't draft a lot of Ravens. And you're probably like, Chase, why would you say that? You're covering the Ravens for a while. No guy is going to get enough touches or enough touchdowns, in my opinion, where they're going to be a great fantasy asset in a sense. They're not just going to be that one go-to target, because there are so many options. DeAndre Hopkins is a great red zone threat. Mark Andrews led all tight ends in touchdowns last year. I don't see that happening again. You have Isaiah Likely. You have all these weapons. And I think Kohler could be utilized as well. And in a sense, I kind of see, and you go back to 2019, where Mark Andrews can play his own role, where he was that, go-to number 1 tight end. And then Hayden Hurst, I feel like, could kind of be the Isaiah Likely, kind of this like great receiver, not as much blocker. And then Kohler can play the Nick Boyle role. I feel like that 3 tight end set could really work in Todd Monken's offense.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And obviously, like I mentioned before, Isaiah Likely getting surgery on his foot just last week from an injury in training camp. He says that Isaiah Likely, John Harbaugh says he could return, ready for week 1 against the Buffalo Bills. Now, again, do you need him necessarily in that first game? I know he's going to want to play 100%, but I don't think it's even the worst thing in the world if you got Charlie Kohler and Mark Andrews, holding down the fort for the tight ends, and Isaiah Likely gets 100%, within the next couple of weeks after that, and he comes back, week 3, 4, or 5. I think it's completely fine. You've got plenty of other pieces to go to, but obviously, he's a baller, he's a gamer, he's going to want to be out there. But I agree with you 100%. The tight ends are going to be so crucial this season for the Ravens.
Absolutely, and I love what you mentioned the whole Todd Monken with Brock Bowers thing, because I think it's right. I think that it's kind of just a perfect mesh. I think John Harbaugh likes to use the tight ends as well. I think that a lot of things could work out there. Again, I'm really high on Charlie Kolar, and I'm a big advanced stats person. Sumer Sports gives a lot of great advanced stats for tight ends. They have a stat called targets per routes run or whatever. He had 0.3 targets per routes run last year. That was the second most among tight ends in the NFL. So I think that when he is on the field, they're going to him. He's creating separation. He's making an impact. Can continue to do that this year.
Yeah, gosh, you better hope so, right? I mean, I think that's one of the biggest mottos that John Harbaugh has every single year, trying to get the most out of his players in every single game. And obviously, this season, like you said, right off the top, I mean, this is probably their best chance to get to the Super Bowl. Even if they don't, though, they've given themselves every person on this roster to do so. But I also think that for the tight ends and Charlie Kohler specifically, they're going to get their chances. They definitely are. Like you said, John Harbaugh likes tight ends. So again, it's just a perfect recipe. I keep going back to that phrase because it's just, I mean, it's like all the cooks are in the kitchen and you're hoping everything aligns for the Ravens this year.
You 100% are. I want to talk about one more breakout candidate, and I don't even know if you can call him a breakout candidate because he already had a decently strong season last year. But from what I've been hearing about training camp, I am really, really high on this coming year at nose tackle. No more Michael Pierce. Travis Jones is the full-time nose tackle. I think he could be a really, really solid piece this year. What have you noticed from him?
Travis Jones, what an interesting pull. I do like that though. Obviously he's always been there. He's been solid for the last couple of years since the Ravens drafted him. And he's, again, you can't teach size. He's a big guy. And I mean, just the sheer power that he has. And on that line too, with the Ravens bringing back, defensive end Brent Urban, you've got him as an option. But you're right. The Michael Pierce situation is a big deal. And I know they were looking at a couple of different rookies like Teddy Buchanan, or a couple other guys that they brought in through the draft that are, just bigger, middle defensive line guys. And you're right. I mean, Travis Jones is more of that veteran player now. Maybe he deserves that spot from what he has shown. And it's going to be interesting to see who they're rotating in and out of that spot throughout the preseason games, to be honest with you. And then I think they're going to make a decision. And one of my favorite things to look forward to is when they do make their final cut downs, which is obviously such a big just part of training camp and getting ready for the regular season. But for the Ravens staff, it's huge. And whether or not they're going to take an undrafted free agent rookie, which I don't believe they did last year, but they have for so many years.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think Travis Jones could just bring so much to the table. I always think that year 4 can oftentimes be that all right, take big leap year. We saw that from Matt and I understand that they both play different positions on the D line. Nose tackle's not going to be the one to compile a ton of sacks, but I still believe that Travis Jones could even find a way to have really solid statistics if Kyle Van Noy is taking up attention and Odafe Owe is taking up attention and Matt Abike. I actually do think Travis Jones, we look back statistically, and I think this could be the year where he's on national radar like a Nnamdi Madubuike was after year 4. And then all of a sudden, we were talking about Ravens' contractual issues earlier. All of a sudden, that would add another component to the mix if we want to bring him back. So I think the nose tackle position, Michael Pierce held it well. I think Travis Jones could, again, maybe take that next step. And I know he's always played really well in preseason, so I'm excited to see how he does in preseason.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what preseason is all about, right? What can you bring, back to the table that you have or even haven't shown as part of your game throughout the seasons that you've been here, like Travis Jones. And that's why I also think, you're talking about, plug and playing different guys. And that's what I look forward to throughout the preseason, right? So for Travis Jones, and like I said before, everybody is trying to get a job. Okay. Nobody's, spot is really secure if they're on a fringe type of player. Not that I think Travis Jones really is, but also, again, he's been in this locker room. He's probably taken pointers from Michael Pierce before he retired, and shout out to Michael Pierce for going out on a high note with that interception, because if Travis Jones does that this year at any point, hands down, absolutely perfect for that job. So I love that. And Zach was going absolutely nuts for that. So again, also year 2 with Zach Orr's defense, I hope that we're going to be surprised. I hope that he's going to throw us some curveballs that we haven't seen the Ravens defense do before, like that in, a last regular season game or whatever. But it's going to be an interesting road for the Ravens under year 2. And Travis Jones is potentially going to be a big part of that. You're right.
It's funny you mentioned the Zach Orr year 2 defensive coordinator. Not a lot of people loved Mike Macdonald in the beginning of his year 1 either. Kind of the same with Zach Orr. Both defenses in year 1 in the defensive coordinator position, they struggled to begin the year. Then all of a sudden, the second half, they're the best defense in the National Football League. And then we'll see what happens this coming year. But all I know is second year under Mike Macdonald, the Ravens were one of the best defenses I think we've seen in the past decade in that season. Now they have even more tools and more resources. I think this could be a monster year for the Ravens defense if they can stay healthy now with that offseason and going into year 2 with Zach Orr.
100%. And everybody that I've talked to, obviously, Roquan Smith, all the guys are like, this year 2 with Zio is going to be nuts. And obviously they brought in Chuck Pagano, who's a big proponent of the defense and knows the Baltimore Ravens so well, obviously was on the team for many, many years and worked with Coach Harbaugh and all that stuff. And the reason why they brought in Dean Pease last year made such a big difference. But I remember Chuck Smith saying this offseason, like that transformation that the Ravens defense made in the middle of last season, that was Zach Orr. So obviously bringing in help and bringing in veteran coaches to advise him was a big help. But I think him being so close to the game as the most recent former player, and he's just got so much energy for the game. He sees things differently. And just because it didn't look good, and the numbers also weren't good either when you're, completely dead last and, stopping catches, the exact stat, is losing my mind. But anyway, they did make a big turnaround. So if they start off on the right foot, they start off strong this season like they ended last season, I think they're going to be very happy with themselves. And this defense, like I said, gosh, it's got so many new pieces. You're talking about having a full secondary of first-round picks in Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, Malachi Starks, and Jair Alexander. And it's like, what more could you want? And I think, gosh, Zach Orr is going to have so much fun with these guys, right? So I think that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, no, definitely 100%. You are right. And I think that the one key thing for the defense this year is while they played well in the second half last year, and I think they played a solid game against Buffalo, the one key thing, the Ravens defense, I believe, needs to start forcing turnovers in the playoffs. A lot of people put a lot of the blame on the offense, the Lamar Jacksons, the Mark Andrews in recent years for the postseason failures, if you will, or coming up short with the expectations set high. The Ravens defense has forced one turnover during Lamar Jackson's tenure at quarterback in the postseason. To me, the Ravens need to start to force more turnovers in the postseason, like Jalen Hurts has, like Patrick Mahomes has, so that yes, if the offense does make some mistakes, that turnover differential, it's not 3-0, it's 3-1 or 3-2, and that's going to put the offense in a much better position to succeed.
Yes, and you're not the only one who thinks that as well, because one of my co-hosts on WBAL, C4, brought that up a couple weeks ago, and you're absolutely right. The Ravens just need to force takeaways. And the fact that Lamar Jackson has turned the ball over so many times in the postseason, like I said before, he hadn't done that all year throughout the regular season. It's a completely different ballgame. And it's just bizarre. And the fact that we really didn't see, I'm always looking for a pick six. That's my favorite thing to see the Ravens defense do. And the fact that we got those later in the season, totally fine. They still showed up. Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, just those balls just thrown right to him. That's what I'd love to see. That's when I really looked at this defense at the end of last year and thought they have completely turned around. And so I think you're absolutely right. Can they force more turnovers in the regular season, and can that translate into postseason turnovers? You hope so, right? So I think that's going to be the biggest thing that they're looking forward to working on. And with all these guys that have great hands, you're hoping that it's the truth.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. And that's something that overall this team just needs to play at their highest level. It goes back to the first point that we made in the episode. This team has all the talent. When they're at their best, they're one of the league's best, but they need to do that in January if they want to see come to fruition and they want to capture that third Lombardi trophy in franchise history. Valerie, overall, we mentioned so many things. Just what makes you the most excited about the season? Do you really think this could be the year for Ravens fans to witness Lamar Jackson and this crew raising Lombardi?
Gosh, I hope so. It's year 8 for Lamar Jackson. I'm hoping it's lucky year number 8. Obviously, that's his jersey number, so we're hoping for good news to come out of that. And again, this team is just unstoppable on paper. You're hoping that barring a season-ending injury, knock on wood, that will not happen this year. They were able to stay so healthy last year. Let's, fingers crossed, repeat that here in Baltimore, because that's really the only thing that could stop them. And I just think that they are truly so talented in every single position right now that there really are no major weaknesses that they couldn't overcome in a game or two. Now, their first 6 weeks is insane, right? You're playing you're playing the Bills, you're playing the Browns right off the bat. You've got, an AFC North division, you're playing Joe Flacco potentially coming back here to Baltimore, which could be awesome. And then you've got the Chiefs also. I mean, this is no easy first 6 weeks with an early bye, completely different to last year where they had a really late bye. And then you just rip off 11 weeks of, still hard football and then try to get to the playoffs. And my biggest point with the Ravens every year, and I noticed this last year, they can get to the Super Bowl. The problem is they have to play nearly 3 Super Bowl games to get there, considering the teams and the quarterbacks that they face in the postseason. You're hoping that they get that first round bye. You're hoping they win the AFC North again, get that first seed like they did in 2024, right? And was that last year? No, 2023. You're right, when they hosted the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. You're hoping that they get that first round bye. They don't have to play the wild card game like they did this past year, even though that was almost like a walkover. But you're hoping that they do that. You're either playing the Bills, the Chiefs, potentially Cincinnati, who knows? But the Bills and the Chiefs, to get through both of them in one season twice, that's a tall order. That is a tall order. And to do it again in the postseason, even harder. So once you get to an NFC team for Lamar Jackson in the Super Bowl, I think it's fine. His record against the NFC is incredible. So it's just getting past those AFC quarterbacks. That's the toughest part.
No, sure. I think we're witnessing one of the greatest quarterback eras in history. We're witnessing it all in the AFC with those 4: Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, and Burrow. And I just think that we could witness the situation where one of those guys ever wins a Super Bowl. And Ravens fans are praying that Lamar Jackson is not the guy who is Super Bowl-less afterwards. I think it will be Burrow. I think Cincinnati will find a way to just not capitalize on this opportunity. It's the Bengals. It's a franchise that does not have the same winning pedigree or culture as a Buffalo, as a Kansas City, as a Baltimore. So that's my personal opinion on it. But overall, you're right. It's going to be a very, very tough road in the AFC. I mean, last year, a lot of Ravens fans like to say, oh, yeah, we can't get to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are there. But they've also lost to the Bills back-to-back times where they could have then possibly played the Chiefs, and who knows what happens in the divisional round in Buffalo in 2020 and 2024. And if the weather conditions are too terrible, both games was terrible weather, then win the games you need to. Don't lay the eggs against the Raiders and the Browns and the Colts like they have in previous seasons. Win those games, get home field advantage, and hope that let the chips fall as they may. And hopefully the breaks go your way, and hopefully you play your best football and peak at the right time. But that has to be the strategy and the philosophy here for Baltimore as I finally look to capture the Super Bowl. Valerie Preactor, thank you so much for taking the time here today to join us here on Flock Friday. I appreciate it.
Of course, Chase. This is awesome, as always, to talk Ravens right before the season starts. So much excitement, so much hype. Fingers crossed we'll be talking about Santa Clara when we get to February.
It sure would be a lot of fun. We're excited for the season. Everyone, links to all of Valerie's work, her social media, everything is in the description. We're going to wrap this Flock Friday up here alongside Valerie Preactor, WBAL and 98 Rock. I am your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long. We're one Ravens preseason game down by the time you're seeing this episode. A few more to go. Don't go anywhere. A lot more coverage right here on Flock Fridays.